This is Caroline Miller. I'm going to get us going on this webinar. Happy New Year. We're going to talk about how to achieve your goals in 2017 and beyond, I hope. So I want to just chat for a moment here to welcome everybody and say, even if it's January 6th already, because we have people signed up from all over the world, it's still the beginning of the year. This is still a fresh start for all of us. And there is something called the Fresh Start Effect. The research shows that when we tie our goals to a temporal landmark, and that could be the beginning of a year, it could be a birthday, it could be, the first day of spring, it could be another kind of day or landmark that's important to you. When you choose to make a fresh start at a time like the beginning of the year or another fresh start, you really have an increased capacity to start new habits and change and get where you want to go. So I want to just say, let's take advantage of the fact that this is a fresh start. It is a new year. And we're always capable of change and achieving our goals. And as many of you already know, I'm a big fan of goal setting. I have a track on Happify that is a goal setting track, and I also have a grit track, which I think is closely tied in with setting and pursuing and achieving really hard goals. So please go to the next level after we talk today and see if those tracks can't help you get where you want to go. So with that, what I'd like to do is I want to take about 10-15 minutes to walk you through a quick PowerPoint just to give you some visuals and some text to help you understand a little bit more about goal setting and how I feel about it and why I came to this field, why I feel so strongly about learning the science of goal setting and how it can help you. Because I have a stake in this issue, a really important stake that started many decades ago and that literally saved my life. So I come to this topic with a whole lot of passion, and now luckily I have the science and evidence behind me to help other people do the same. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we are going to go from here. So at this point you ought to be able to see my main screen, and if it's a problem, let me know. Otherwise, I'm just going to start. This is how to achieve your goals in 2017. And as I said, I'm Caroline Miller. It's January 5th. So what is my stake in this issue? About 30 years ago, I was struggling with an eating disorder called bulimia. And this was back in the late 70s and early 80s where nobody knew how to get better. And it was kind of a hidden disease, a very shameful one. And like many other competitive swimmers or high achievers, I fell victim to this eating disorder. And I vowed to myself that if I ever got better, I was going to write about it because I wanted people to know that it wasn't a disease of just not wanting to get better, having low willpower. I had all of those things. I simply couldn't put all of the steps together to get better until I did. And that's when I wrote the first book by anybody who did overcome this eating disorder. And it broke new ground and put me on the map in some way. So the book was called My Name is Caroline. It's still in print. Came out in 1988. And it saved a lot of lives because it gave people hope. And hope is really at the center of being able to set and accomplish and achieve goals. So it really does all start with hope. You have to have hope that you can find the resources, find the people, find the support, establish a team that's going to be helpful to you. And really that's how I got into this, is because a lot of people, tens of thousands, if not over 100,000 people have reached out to me since then to ask me how to help them accomplish big goals. So it started with that book, and I thought I knew the science of goal setting. I thought I did, and yet I didn't until I went back to Penn, and that's when I learned 10 years ago in the first class of MAP graduates that there was this thing called goal setting theory. So after I finished at Penn in 2006, I wrote the book Positively Caroline to help explain in hindsight how did I not just get into recovery, but how did I stay in recovery? Because really, that's what some of you have already written to me about, which is, how do you maintain the passion and the courage and the tools to not just accomplish something short-term, but accomplish it long-term and hang on to it. So that book, believe it or not, Positively Caroline, is also a goal-setting book that a lot of people might find helpful. But, saving your life is a very big goal, and figuring out how to take the daily steps to do the right thing is also an important part of the process. So since I found goal setting to be a life-saving kind of thing, not just for me, but for other people, I wanted to know how to help other people with all kinds of goals. So after I graduated again from Penn, my capstone that year was the book Creating Your Best Life, and that came out in late 2008, early 2009. That book was the first book to connect the science of goal setting with the science of happiness. And it's important to understand that until MAP students and other people were able to translate the findings of academia and bring them out into the real world in an applied way, people didn't have access to these theories. So I was really surprised to find out that there was all this science behind not just how to set goals, but how to accomplish them, how to create a circle of contagious positivity, why happiness precedes all success in life. You know, we don't become happy because we succeed after we become happy first. So that book really laid the groundwork for a lot of people about not just, that goals are kind of this amorphous, kind of vague idea, but that there's something very specific you can do in a step-by-step way. So I'm really proud of that book. And then it laid the groundwork for a book I have coming out in a few months called Getting Grit. If you're going to set any really hard goals, which most people don't, and we all really should, because the happiest people wake up every single day to clear-cut, hard goals. These are the goals that pull you forward. These are the goals that ask you to dig deep. These are the goals that you're really proud of, not just at the end of the day, but at the end of your life. You need to have this quality called grit, and it's kind of gone AWOL in our society, unfortunately. So in Creating Your Best Life, I talk about the importance of grit, but I've spent the last 8-9 years really thinking harder about how do you cultivate grit. And so if you want to be an achiever in life, if you want to have a flourishing life, if you want to have a life that's meaningful and purposeful and not just pleasant, you've got to have goals and you have to have grit, because that's what leads to achievement. So let's just take a quick look at some of the things that I believe you're going to need to do in order to set and achieve goals this year and beyond. I've become really taken with the whole idea of storytelling. I've always known about the power of story, but the more I read, the more I see that we learn through story, we communicate ideas through stories, and it's very important to understand what's the story that you want to tell about yourself. In our field of positive psychology, one of the things that we do like to use is the best possible self story. And it's not just a little writing exercise, it's a proven evidence-based exercise that I would like everybody to start with, which is, what's the story you want to tell about yourself? In a year, what is the story you want to tell other people, or that you want told about you? The things you did, who you were, what your character strengths were, how you helped other people, how you made a difference in the world. What's that story? Because we're all living a script that we've written, whether we know it or not. We're living the script that we believe is the story we should be living, or are destined to live, when in fact that's really not so. So I want everyone to start with, what's the story that you want to tell about yourself? And on my website, I'll give you that address at the end, you can download the formal version of this exercise, the best possible future self exercise. But for right now, take in the concept that you need to have some idea of who it is you want to become. And I have a picture here of the very famous Diana Nyad, the woman who at, I think, the age 62, after failing many times in her 20s, and again several times as she went into her 60s, her big goal was swimming from Cuba to Key West. And so she didn't achieve it in her 20s. And as she approached the age of 60, again, a temporal landmark, she asked herself, not what do I want to do, but who do I want to be? Who do I want to be? And that's really what we have to think about. Who do we want to be? And so let's start thinking about not just the things that you want to do, but what's the character that you want to have? What's the impact you want to have? How do you want to role model things for other people? How do you want to give back? And one of the most valuable things I was told early in my recovery from my eating disorder was that you can't keep what you don't give away. And I feel very strongly about that. If you begin to have answers and make progress towards your goals, it's important to turn around and help other people too. So let that be part of your story. So after you've written your best self story, who do I want to be? And make these goals big, by the way. I'm a big believer in not just SMART goals, because I don't really believe in realistic goals, not for everybody. And actually for most people, if not all people, you should have some unrealistic goals, because the research is very clear that high achievers don't set realistic goals, they set unrealistic goals. And that's why I've included an image here from Google X, which is the lab of moonshot dreams at Google. And several years ago, they had a goal of developing a driverless car, which everyone thought was absurd at the time. And now, you know, they're on the roads, and Uber has driverless cars in Pittsburgh and elsewhere. So, you know, the lab of moonshot dreams shows all of us that when you set huge goals and you bring brain power and hope and optimism to accomplishing those goals, there's really no limit to what you can accomplish. So set Google X goals. Think about what's the best possible thing that could happen to me? What's the best possible outcome to my life? And then see where that takes you. And don't dream small, dream big, because big dreams have power and they have passion. So the next thing I really think everybody should do, and I'm a big believer in this, is to take the Values in Action Character Strengths Test. I call it the VIA Strengths Test for short. Go to viacharacter.org and take this free test, because it will rank your strengths from 1 to 24. And one of the things that we've found in our field is that people aren't just happier when they know what their top 5 strengths are, but also when they use those strengths to pursue and accomplish their goals, but also to just live their best lives on a daily basis. And so one of our first assignments at Penn when I went back there was to write a Me at My Best story, and that was, you know, who are you when you use these top 5 strengths? Tell us about a time when all of those 5 strengths showed up for you. And the reason why this is so important in pursuing and achieving goals is because when you think of that Me at My Best story, it gives you a great blueprint for how to use your strengths in the best ways, in the best context, in the right dose. And so take the VIA Character Strengths Test. You won't be sorry. It'll only take you about 15 minutes. But I want you, as you think about what's my best possible self, you're going to have goals begin to come from it. And I want you to start to match those goals with what your strengths are. How will you use your curiosity? How will you use your wisdom, your love of learning? How will you use those strengths that are most important to you and how you see the world and express yourself to accomplish the goals? And be very specific. One of the biggest problems we see in goal setting is that people are too vague with their goals. Goals need to be very specific, and they need to be what's called leveraged. You know, you need to have short-term goals and long-term goals, and they can't be what's called goals in conflict, where if you accomplish one, the other one you're less likely to accomplish. As you accomplish the short-term goals, it's truly important to have them leverage in with the longer-term goals so that there becomes this domino effect, and your strengths can really help you in this process. You also want to do something that's increasingly important that we see in the research, and that is you can't be kind of pie in the sky, kind of law of attraction, it will happen if I want it badly enough. That's kind of a magical approach that doesn't really work. What you want to do is think about what are the things that have been obstacles for me before? What are the people? What are the situations? What's the mindset that has derailed me in the past? What are the situations coming up in my life that I know or that are going to occur? And then how am I going to get around them? The research shows that people who plan for obstacles, who know that it won't be easy, actually have more zest and resilience as they pursue their goals. So it's really important to not just think through who's my best self, who do I want to be in a year, in 5 years, in 10 years, but what are the things that are probably going to appear or might appear in my life that I will have to work around. You will have a far more realistic sense of how you're going to meet these obstacles. And you know, the other thing that's been found to work when you go into the future and you say, this is who I want to be, and then you come back to the present and you take a look at, well, what do I have to do first? Doing it in that order is called mental contrasting. And it's been found that when you do that in that order, go into the future and then come back to here, what you find is that people are less overwhelmed by getting to those big goals. So if you start with, here I am today and there's where I want to be, what do I have to do? You're less likely to succeed than if you do it in the opposite order. So again, that's called mental contrasting. So think about the obstacles and your plans to overcome them. And then some really interesting research I ran into last year. I'm a football fan, so unfortunately my team doesn't win very often. It's the Washington Redskins. But anyway, so what you find with people like the quarterback of the New England Patriots here in the United States, it's a very popular football team. They win a lot. But one of the things they found the quarterback does, and his name is Tom Brady, is he sees things happening ahead of time. So when he goes on the field on Sunday for games, he says he's just verifying what he already saw in his mind. These things already occurred. And what he does, this kind of visualization of success, we're also seeing in the world of virtual reality, which I think is really an exciting place for future development of goal setting and other character strengths, is when you see these things unfolding around you in your mind, sometimes in virtual reality, it's almost as if you've already experienced it. You've written that script ahead of time. And so what we've found is that people who take a few minutes at the beginning of the day, and they visualize themselves going through 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, that meeting, that interaction, that important phone call. If you see it happening ahead of time and you take those few minutes to visualize what's the best way I could get through those, people tend to be more zestful, more optimistic, and more successful. So see this story happening daily. Think about it. Devote some time ahead of time to doing that. And so the next thing that's really important is you have to design your environment. It's really, really critical that you think about something that I think is often undervalued. And I certainly hadn't heard about social contagion theory 10 years ago till I started to read Nick Christakis' research on how emotions catch. And when we look in the workplace, one of the things that Kim Cameron and his group at the Ross School of Business have found is that there are people called positive energizers. And I depict that here with the sunflower because what he says and what this research shows, and Barb Fredrickson talks about this too, is that we all turn towards the light. We turn towards people who make us feel like we're 10 feet tall, who give us hope and inspire us, not people who demotivate us and who criticize us and bring us down and give us, say, passive, destructive kinds of comments when we share something important with them. So it's really important to think about what I call the web of support, but who goes on this journey with you? And be selective. Women tend to not do as good a job at this as men do. Women have more frenemies in their lives than men do because they're afraid of not being seen as nice. But you really do need to be somewhat ruthless and very thoughtful about who's going to be included in this journey. Who do you want to confide in? There's some important research that finds that the first person you share your good news with or progress on a goal that's very important to you, that person's response to your good news could actually stop you dead in your tracks if it's not what's called active constructive responding, which means curiosity and enthusiasm. So if you remember nothing else from today's webinar, please take in the information that people have to be curious and enthusiastic, and not just about your goals, but about your progress. And so be really thoughtful about who gets your attention, whose emails do you open, whose calls do you take. So I already got a question ahead of time from someone who said, well, what if the people close to you don't support your goals and dreams? Someone very specifically says, I want a lake house, and my husband doesn't see the value of it, and I've really researched it and looked into the land and everything else. Well, this is a piece of what you might want to really think through, is if someone's not supportive of your goals and they're in your closest circle, they're in your family, maybe you're married to them. This is very, very common. One thing that you might want to share is your story. How do you see this goal being part of your story? How do you see this goal bringing out your best self? I've worked with a lot of financial advisors who've told me that sometimes couples are more familiar with the other person's financial habits than they are their hopes, dreams, and goals. And there's something called the Michelangelo effect. And in good relationships, what you find is that people sculpt their partners because they know what their dreams and hopes and story is. They know who that person wants to be, and their feedback and their compliments are all related to sculpting that person in the way in which they want to be seen. And so share those visions and dreams and goals with the people who are closest to you. Now, on the other hand, there are going to be people who you may need to really contain. And maybe it is somebody in your life, a sister, a brother, a mother. You may have to do what we've found in the field to be this mathematical ratio of the best relationships to maintain your positivity and your positive emotions, is you have to drown out their negativity with 5 positives, and that's what it'll take, whether it's positives that come at you or positives that you generate. Those can be meditation, it can be exercise, it can be spending time with someone you love. Any of these things that we call wise interventions or positive interventions, you may have to drown out the negative by bringing in more positives. So that's what Barbara Fredrickson has said. You either reduce the negatives or increase the positives. So that's one of the ways in which you contain the environment. But think really carefully about who is on your journey. I'm in 2 mastermind groups, and they're both very important to me, one in person and one virtual one. And I'm very thoughtful about who hears my goals, but also whose goals am I supporting. In the workplace, these positive energizers, they just make everybody feel like they can do, whatever is in front of them, and we all need to be that person for somebody else. Make sure you have those people, but also make sure you're doing that for somebody else. So in basketball, it's called the plus-minus factor. When one player is on the court, everybody else plays better. So make sure that you play better because of the people who are in your life. And so the other part of this is, how does your environment, help you succeed? So I like to talk about, and I talked about this in Creating Your Best Life, priming your environment, doing it with slogans, doing it with the things that bring you joy. You can probably see I have a lot of color around me. I'm pretty well known for color. Even this webinar is in multicolor. But I have zest as a top character strength, and I love color. It makes me feel zestful. So I include a lot of color in my life. So how does your environment, how do the colors, the words, the pictures, how does your license plate, your email address, how about your computer passwords? I think I was the first person to suggest 10 years ago that all your computer passwords should be changed to reflect what your goals are. But everything you encounter, everything that you look at, every person who crosses your path, whenever possible, have that environmental cue stimulate you to think goal-directed thoughts and to have goal-directed behaviors. And then as success occurs, you want to unpack it as quickly as you can. So when you have a good day, a good week, a good outcome, don't rush on from it. Don't just be a work in progress. Unpack it. There's a great saying that success leaves clues. So unpack success as it occurs, because success can be replicated. It's not magic. It doesn't just happen. It happens because you do specific things, you think specific things, you enlist the support of specific people or groups of kinds of people. And often accountability is one of the biggest ways that we accomplish our goals. So being accountable to the right people, having accountability factors, even like publicly stating your goals, that can be really important. But unpack your success, because everyone's journey is a little bit different from everyone else's journey. So really, think that through. And then I just want to leave before I start taking questions here. On my website, there's a whole wealth of information, a lot of information. I have my Happify tracks on goal setting and grit that I really encourage you to look at, because Happify is your daily medicine. That's what you take in order to continue to grow your well-being and to incorporate different ways how to deal with negative thinking, how to overcome anxiety, how to build a happier relationship, better family life. So Happify is the daily medicine that you need to take in order to have these good things continue to occur and these big thoughts to happen. But on my website, I have a lot of other free things, including I got special dispensation from my publisher to give out the final version of the introduction and first chapter of my book, Getting Grit, which is getting amazing pre-reviews. So I'm really, really proud of it, and I've made that available for free. So just go to my website, and download the chapter. I also sell an incredibly discounted 100-page workbook on these concepts and more with reusable worksheets. So I took a month-long goal-setting class I taught, and I encapsulated it into just 100 pages with worksheets, with exercises, all kinds of things. So this isn't something you do once. This is something you do over and over and over again. You're never really done with goal setting. You can, and the happiest people, once they accomplish their goals, you know what they do is they set bigger goals. They keep going. They don't rest on their laurels. And that is the recipe for a really happy, fulfilling life. And so that's how you can find me on Twitter and Instagram. I love to have new followers, and I love to have questions and interactions with people. So I had just a few more questions that came in. I'm going to look here at any questions that could be rolling in. Okay, oh my goodness, a lot of them. All right, let me just go with another one here that came in. I'm great at fresh starts and terrible at follow-through. How do I keep my motivation after the new year starts? Well, this is a very common problem. What we find is that you know, people are very good at fresh starts because it's easy to do that. So there's some research showed that in 30-day video classes, after the first or second day, the drop-off was 50 to 70%, and a fraction of people actually got to 30 days. So this inability to stay committed to things is very common. So one of the ways I think you increase your commitment to your goals is to find some passion for it. So this is where grit is so interesting, is because people who have grit have passion for their goals. So no matter what happens, no matter how many, you know, setbacks or dark nights of the soul or no's or, you know, falling down they have, there's so much passion they have that's intrinsic. It's something that's important to them. They get up and keep going. So check your passion level and see, is this something that's really important to you? On top of that, I want to say that our ability to stay focused and our ability to actually have attention span has really shrunk in the last generation. So at this point, it's 1 second less than a goldfish. And so we can maintain attention for about 7 seconds, and goldfish can do it for 8 seconds. So what does that say? It says we live in an instant gratification world. So one of the things I talk about in my grit book is that we have to cultivate the character strength of patience. And patience means being able to sit with impulsivity and not act on it. So find small ways to begin to do that. Oh, I have so many questions rolling in. And so how do you do that? So have passion, have people around you, break long-term goals into very short-term goals, have wins, celebrate the wins. And actually, let me take some of the ones here. We only have a few more minutes. Let's see. Someone who has a chronic illness and is having difficulty making progress on goals. You know, it depends on what kinds of goals we're talking about here. So with chronic illness, if you're setting huge physical goals, those might be really difficult, but there's other kinds of goals. There's mental goals. You can have a goal to be optimistic. You can have a goal to actually do one hard thing a day, and your hard thing will not be different, will not be the same as someone else's hard thing. So there's always something you can strive to do, and we have to be very careful not to compare our goals and our hard and our easy to anyone else's hard or easy. Let's see. Advice to do when you're feeling demotivated and overwhelmed on the path of achieving goals. Well, I do talk about this in my Happify track. When people are demotivated, sometimes what you need to do is kind of take a look at your strategy. Do you have the right strategy? Is it something that's too overwhelming? Do you have to build up what's called your self-efficacy by having smaller mastery experiences before you take a big bite of the apple? You also want to have a role model. So self-efficacy theory does talk about the importance of role models. People who've actually done what you want to do and who can serve either from a distance or up close as mentors, and people to just hold out that beacon of hope and say, you know, if they did it, I can do it too. And I have to say that's what saved my life with my eating disorder, is one person had the courage to say in front of me at a meeting that she was recovering from bulimia one day at a time. And she said that in 1984 before anybody knew how to get better. And because she said it, I'm alive. And because of that, I've turned around and given hope to other people. So make sure that you have role models who give you hope, because when you have hope, when you believe you can accomplish something, a number of things change in your brain. It's called pathways thinking. So you begin to generate more solutions to get to where you want to be, but you also begin to believe more in your ability to get to those solutions. How can I stay focused? Well, okay, so we have something called attention deficit trait now. It's not attention deficit disorder, but because we're constantly juggling and doing too many things, like I'm doing right now, I'm watching this, I'm looking at the clock. I mean, this is a piece of what's going on in our society is we're doing too many things at once. One of the things I found in writing the Grit book is that when we monofocus deliberately, when we tune out all technology, when we make it impossible for ourselves to do anything other than one thing at a time, we end up feeling more satisfied with the product we're working on, but we also tend to go deeper into something, and that's where you get these amazing solutions. So find a way to just monofocus, and it's going to be difficult at first. Start with 5 minutes, try to get to 10 minutes, but try that. So it's the problem of our times. So you're not alone. And let me see. Is it possible or even recommended to teach your spouse how to react positively? Yes. I'm trying to find 5 things. Yes. Okay, so I had a great story about a woman who started a business, and it was a huge risk. And her husband, he loved her. He really did. But she'd been very successful in this other career, but she longed to do this other thing, which she hired me to help her do, and it was a huge success. But at the beginning, he would say a number of things like, well, how are we ever going to buy that vacation house? Or, you know, how will you contribute to your IRA? Or will we really make it? Or what are you going to do when the lights don't go on in your business? And that kind of thing. And she sat him down one day and said, I need you to stop. I need you to stop because you don't realize what this is doing to me, what it's doing to my motivation, what it's doing to my well-being. I know you love me, but I don't think you realize how negative you're being. And I don't know if she's the outlier or the exception to the rule, but she's not the only person who's told me that literally a come-to-Jesus meeting with someone who's really important to them, where they say, you may not recognize this, but you're kind of a pessimist, and your way of motivating yourself is demotivating me. It actually solved the problem. He became her biggest fan, but he had to learn how to not do the thing that worked for him that didn't work for her. So I would say a whole lot of honesty goes a long way. And I think we're out of time. And so I'm going to just say thank you very much for coming to this webinar. I see you have the, you can take the VIA Strengths Assessment at Happify. You can also do it at the VIA Institute, and I welcome any questions. My email address is caroline@carolinemiller.com, and I do hope that you will not just explore Happify, but come to my website and see what else I offer, and please pre-order my Grit book, because these pre-orders really do matter, and Grit is really the quality that has gone missing that I really would like to see people cultivate more of and develop, because when people have grit, they do amazing things, and those things end up inspiring and awing other people to do extraordinary things. So whenever I look at turning points in history, what I see is grit, or what I call authentic grit. So I would love it if people could take a look at my chapter and then pre-order it, and let me know what you think. So I appreciate everyone's time and attention, and hope that I've made a small difference. So happy 2017, and use this fresh start to your advantage, and have a great day.